The 25th expert failed at 11:47 p.m. His diamond drill screamed against the green patina lockbox, skipped sideways, and carved a bright scar into the antique brass without opening anything. Across the study, Lena Vale stopped pushing her mop, though nobody noticed her at first because nobody ever noticed the night maid unless she spilled water, blocked a doorway, or failed to become invisible quickly enough. The Mafia boss noticed the drill. Matteo Rinaldi sat in a black leather chair beside the mahogany desk, one gloved hand resting near a stack of cash, the other curled around an untouched glass of whiskey. 2 bodyguards stood behind him. 3 exhausted locksmiths stood near the lamp. A famous security consultant wiped sweat from his neck and whispered that nobody could open the box without destroying the papers inside. Lena looked at the fake keyhole, then at the lotus-shaped button beside it. "You're working on the wrong part," she said. Every man in the room turned, and the drill whine died. The study inside the Rinaldi house was larger than the apartment where Lena Vale slept, and colder than the church basement where she had eaten free soup as a child. It had walls paneled in dark walnut, shelves heavy with old law books nobody opened, velvet curtains the color of dried wine, and a ceiling painted with clouds so expensive they looked ashamed to be indoors. At the center of the room, beneath a white work lamp, sat the green patina lockbox. It was no larger than a bread loaf, rectangular, heavy, and carved with worn vines around the lid. Decades of oxidation had turned the brass green in the grooves, while old polish still glimmered along the raised edges. It looked beautiful, but it also looked stubborn. 25 men had already tried to open it. Lena knew because she had cleaned up after all of them. She had mopped muddy footprints from the parquet, emptied coffee cups gone cold, gathered torn latex gloves, wiped metal filings from the floor, and watched expensive men become angrier each time the little box refused to obey them. She had not meant to speak, because she had been told to clean the room, not correct it. But the 25th expert had just leaned on the fake keyhole with enough force to make the box tremble, and Lena had seen the tiny glass vial inside the lid shiver through a hairline gap. One more wrong vibration, and the ink capsule would break. Whatever paper Matteo Rinaldi needed would turn black before midnight. The expert turned on her with red eyes. "What did you say?" Lena tightened both hands around the mop handle. Her gray uniform was 2 sizes too large, pinned at the waist with a safety pin and darkened at the hem from dirty water. Her hair was twisted into a knot that had started neat at 7 o'clock and given up around 10, while her feet hurt and her thumb stung where a floor cleaner had found a crack in her skin. She should have lowered her eyes and apologized. Instead, she looked past the expert to the brass box. "I said you're working on the wrong part." A bodyguard near the door laughed once, short and ugly. Matteo Rinaldi did not laugh, and that was the first thing Lena noticed about him when he finally looked at her. Not the black suit, though it was cut so sharply it made every other suit in the room look rented. Not the signet ring on his right hand. Not the controlled violence in his stillness, or the way the whole room seemed built around the fact that nobody wanted his attention. He looked at her as if her words had not offended him yet, which was more dangerous than anger. "Explain," he said. The expert snorted. "Mr. Rinaldi, please. She's the maid." Matteo's eyes did not leave Lena. "I know what she is wearing." "I asked her to explain." The room changed around that sentence. Lena felt it, and so did every man who had spent the evening pretending she was part of the furniture. She released the mop handle, wiped her damp palms on her apron, and walked toward the desk. One of the bodyguards stepped into her path. He was enormous, with cropped hair, a black suit, and a face like a locked gate. "Stay where you are," he said. Lena looked at the wet print his shoe had left on the polished floor and said, "You are standing in ammonia water, and there is a live work lamp plugged into the strip behind your heel." He glanced down despite himself. "Move," she said. The guard did not move because she told him. He moved because Matteo lifted one finger. Lena went to the desk, and up close, the lockbox smelled wrong. The experts had filled the room with hot metal, motor oil, and nervous sweat, but beneath that was an older scent, sugar, tobacco, cold brass, and the faint floral wax that rich women used on old drawers because they believed everything should smell like memory. Her father would have known the smell immediately. Arthur Vale had repaired clocks, music boxes, perfume cases, prayer lockets, and old cabinets for women who never learned his name. When Lena was little, she had sat beside his workbench and watched him coax life out of small mechanisms with vinegar, beeswax, wire, patience, and a kind of respect that made broken things seem less ashamed. Locks are rarely beaten, he used to tell her. They are understood. Then debt swallowed his shop, illness swallowed his hands, and death took him before Lena turned 21. After that, understanding locks became less useful than scrubbing floors, because floors paid by the hour. She bent over the lockbox. "Don't touch it," the expert snapped. "I wasn't planning to kiss it." The bodyguard made a sound that might have been a cough. Mateo's mouth did not move, but something in his eyes sharpened. Lena pointed to the main keyhole, the one everyone had drilled, scoped, and cursed. "This part is a decoy." "Impossible," the expert said. "Expensive things are often impossible until someone stops admiring them." She leaned closer, careful not to touch the box. There is no recent wear inside the keyhole, no brass shine on the pin track, and no oil line. Nobody has used a key there for years, maybe decades. That proves nothing. It proves whoever designed it wanted impatient men to feel useful. Silence followed, and then Mateo set his whiskey down with a click of glass on wood, quiet enough to be polite and cold enough to make Lena's stomach tighten. "And the correct part?" he asked. Lena pointed to the lotus-shaped button set into the right side of the box. The petals were decorative at first glance, but one edge had a seam so fine it was almost invisible beneath the green oxidation. "There." The expert stepped forward. "That is ornamentation. It is a pressure plate. If it were a pressure plate, it would depress. It would if someone hadn't spilled sweet liquor on it 30 years ago." The expert stared. Lena wished she had not said 30. Specific words sounded like certainty, and certainty had consequences in rooms like this. Mateo leaned forward. "How do you know it was liquor?" "Because old sugar hardens differently than glue. Because cigar resin trapped it in the seam. Because the stain is amber, not black, and because the wood under your drink table has the same pattern." She looked at him before she could stop herself. "Your family spills expensive brandy and lets maids solve the archaeology." One of the locksmiths sucked in a breath. Mateo stood. He was tall, broader than he had looked in the chair, and every man in the room adjusted to him before he moved more than 2 steps. Lena felt the old survival instinct tell her to retreat. She had learned that instinct from landlords, staffing managers, drunk clients, and men who believed a uniform meant the body inside it had no opinion. She did not retreat, and Mateo stopped beside the desk, leaving enough space that she could still breathe. "Can it open?" he asked. "Yes." "Can you open it?" "Yes." The expert laughed again, but it broke in the middle. "If she triggers the ink capsule, the ledger is gone," he warned. Lena looked at Mateo. "He is right about that." "What do you need?" "White vinegar." The expert stared at her as if she had requested a spoon to perform surgery. "And a clean cotton rag," Lena added. "Not microfiber, cotton. Also that lamp, lower and to the left." The guard by the door looked at Mateo for permission. Mateo did not look away from Lena. "Give her what she wants." Nobody moved quickly enough, so Lena reached into the front pocket of her apron, pulled out her own small bottle of vinegar, and set it beside the lockbox. "Of course you have it," the expert muttered. "I clean marble bathrooms for people who think lemon soap removes hard water. I carry truth." The guard with the locked gate face looked down, maybe because he was hiding a smile. Lena took the cotton rag from her back pocket, folded it twice, and soaked one corner with 3 drops of vinegar. Not 4, because 4 would run, 3 would wick through the seam slowly enough to soften the sugar without flooding the inner plate. She placed the damp corner over the lotus button and waited. The study held its breath until Mateo asked, "How long?" 40 seconds. You said 1 minute. I included insults. This time the guard definitely coughed. The expert's face went red while Lena waited until the vinegar pulled into the seam, then moved the work lamp lower. Heat warmed the brass, and a thin brown line appeared around the lotus petals. There, she whispered, though nobody else saw it. That was the whole problem with powerful men. They hired people to look at what power understood: codes, locks, drilling, pressure, force. Lena had spent her life cleaning what power left behind: stains under tables, wax in seams, ash in grooves, sugar on brass, secrets crusted where nobody rich bent low enough to see. She wrapped the rag around her thumb. Do not speak, she said, although someone did anyway. Miss, not you, Lena said. The room. The room obeyed. She pressed the lotus. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the box made a soft internal sound, not a click but a sigh, as if some old thing had finally been allowed to stop pretending. The lid lifted a quarter inch, the 25th expert went pale, and the guard near the door stared. Matteo Rinaldi, the most feared Mafia boss in 3 boroughs, said nothing at all. That was how Lena knew she had truly opened it. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight. Matteo did not touch the lid immediately. He looked at the narrow darkness under it, and Lena saw something she had not expected on his face. Not fear, exactly. Not the way ordinary men showed fear. Matteo's fear had discipline. It stood upright, wore a black suit, and waited for permission to bleed. The ledger inside mattered, but the box itself mattered more. Move back, he said. Lena did. The expert reached toward the lid. Matteo's voice stopped him. Not you. The man's hand froze, and Matteo looked at Lena. You. Lena blinked. Me? You opened it. That does not make it mine. It makes you the only person in this room I trust not to be stupid with it. That sentence landed harder than any insult. Lena stepped forward again, aware of every eye on her bent apron, cheap shoes, and vinegar-burned fingers. She lifted the lid with the cotton rag. Inside lay a black leather ledger, a folded cream envelope sealed with cracked rose wax, and a small silver child's bracelet wrapped in tissue. Matteo's hand tightened on the desk as the silver bracelet caught the lamplight. For the first time, the dangerous man looked less like a ruler and more like someone who had spent years standing outside a locked door. Do you want the book first? Lena asked. His gaze did not leave the bracelet. The envelope. Lena lifted it carefully. The wax seal had been pressed with the same lotus from the box. Around it, in the paper fibers, she saw a faint tan shadow. Beeswax. Rose oil. A trace of powdery soap. Not the soap used in this house, but something cheaper and institutional. She placed the envelope in Matteo's gloved hand. He did not open it. Leave, he said. The experts began gathering their tools. Leave the tools, Matteo added. They left faster, and the bodyguards moved toward the doors. She stays, Matteo said. Lena's head snapped up. No, she doesn't. The guard stopped mid-step. Matteo looked at her with the same dangerous stillness he had worn all evening. You have a habit of saying no to men who can make your life difficult. My life is already difficult. You would be arriving late. For a long moment, nobody breathed properly. Then Matteo did something almost worse than smiling. He listened. I meant, he said, I would like you to stay. There may be damage to the papers. You see things my people do not. That was better, not safe but better. Lena looked toward her yellow mop bucket by the Persian rug. The gray water inside it had gone still. Her shift supervisor would dock her pay if she did not finish the east wing. Her landlord would change the lock if she missed another week of rent. The staffing agency would blame her for any missing silver if she left a Mafia study after midnight. She was tired enough to cry and too angry to bother. My shift ends at 2, she said. If I do not finish the east wing, I lose the night's pay. Matteo looked at the stack of cash on the desk. Take the bounty. No. It is $50,000. I can count. His eyes narrowed. Then take it. Lena almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because rich men treated money as if it were a universal solvent. Drop enough of it on any problem, and the problem was supposed to dissolve. What exactly do you expect me to do with $50,000 in unbanded cash? She asked. Walk onto the night bus with it in my apron? Deposit it and explain to the bank that a mafia boss paid me for vinegar work? Hand my landlord hundreds until he decides I am either lying or worth robbing? Matteo said nothing, which was good because silence meant something had entered. I am short on rent, Lena said, hating the truth as it left her mouth. $280. I need that, a cab fare home, and a signed note stating I did not steal from this house. The guard by the door looked like he wanted to sit down. Matteo reached to the cash, peeled off $400 bills, and set them on a blank sheet of stationery. Then he took a black fountain pen from the desk and wrote a receipt in clean, controlled script. Paid to Lena Vale for technical restoration assistance. No theft, damage, or misconduct observed. M. Rinaldi. He slid the paper and money toward her, and Lena read every word before touching it. Matteo noticed. Of course he did. She folded the money inside the receipt and tucked both into the inner pocket of her apron. Thank you, she said. That sounded painful. Gratitude is easier when it doesn't come with surveillance. You think I am going to watch you? You are going to want to. Again, he did not deny it quickly enough. Lena picked up her mop handle. Open your letter, Mr. Rinaldi. I am going to finish the East Wing. Matteo. She paused. My name, he said. If you are going to insult me with accuracy, use my name. Open the letter, Matteo. His eyes changed at the sound of it. Lena turned away before she could decide whether she liked that. She had cleaned the east hallway, 2 bathrooms, and the marble stairs before one of Matteo's men found her again. Not the enormous guard by the study door. This one was older, leaner, and carried himself like a man who had once been handsome before loyalty made him tired. He introduced himself as Enzo, not because she asked, but because Matteo had clearly ordered him to. Mr. Rinaldi requests your presence. Lena wrung out the mop. Mr. Rinaldi can request daylight. He says the paper smells like your cheap soap. Her hand stopped. Enzo's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. He said that would make sense to you. It did. Lena followed him back to the study. Most of the work lights had been removed. Only Matteo remained at the desk, with the ledger open, the envelope unfolded, and the silver bracelet beside his hand. His black gloves lay on the desk now. Without them, his hands looked unexpectedly human, strong, calloused along the fingers, a pale scar crossing one knuckle. He had read the letter. The room had changed because of it. Some rooms felt different after someone cried inside them. This one felt different because Matteo Rinaldi had not cried and had paid for the restraint. My mother wrote this, he said. Lena stayed near the door. I assumed. She died 17 years ago. I am sorry. Everyone says that. Most people mean they are glad it wasn't them. His gaze lifted. Lena had not meant to be cruel. She had meant to be honest. There were nights when those two things wore the same coat. Matteo folded the letter once, carefully. She says my sister did not die. Lena's fingers tightened around the mop handle she had forgotten to put down. I was told she died before she turned 5, he said. Fever, then burial, then silence. My father was alive then. He used grief like a lock. We were not allowed to open it. The silver bracelet on the desk was small enough for a child. Your mother hid something. A ledger. Names. Payments. A convent outside the city. A laundry supplier. His mouth tightened around the last words. The ledger has stains. Lena crossed the room before remembering she had decided not to. Matteo pushed the ledger toward her. She did not sit. Not because she wanted to stand, but because maids were not trained to assume chairs belonged to them. Matteo saw that too. Sit, he said. She looked at him. The word hung between them, too close to an order. Matteo adjusted. Please. That small correction was more intimate than it should have been. Lena sat. The ledger smelled old, dry, and faintly floral. She turned one page with a rag between her fingers. Numbers filled the columns, but numbers had never interested her first. She looked at edges, creases, shadows, and what dirt had chosen to keep. This page was not written in this house, she said. How can you tell? Different dust. Your study dust is dry wood, cigar smoke, and old leather. This has starch, lye soap, rose wax, and boiled linen. She leaned closer. Someone wrote it near a laundry room. A convent laundry? Or a boarding school kitchen. Somewhere women washed sheets with cheap soap and had letters in plain sight because powerful men never checked laundry. Matteo's jaw flexed. Can you find where? Lena looked up, and there it was, the moment when curiosity could become a trap. No, she said. He stilled. No? Not for a room full of men who think a maid is useful only after 25 experts fail. He absorbed that. Enzo looked at the floor. What would make it acceptable? Matteo asked. A contract, clean money, my own name on it, and no cash stacks. No calling me your girl, no putting men outside my apartment door where my neighbor can see, and no asking me to witness violence. Anything else? You speak to me before you speak about me. That one landed. Matteo looked at the open ledger, then at Lena. Done. You agree too fast. I have lost 17 years. I am not interested in wasting the 18th. Lena wanted to say that grief did not excuse power. Instead, she said, then I start in the morning. Tonight. Tomorrow, she said. Because I have been on my feet since 4 a.m., and if your lost sister survived 17 years without me, she can survive 8 more hours. Enzo made the mistake of breathing too audibly. Matteo looked at him. Enzo became a statue. Then Matteo looked back at Lena. Tomorrow. She stood. And Matteo? He waited until she said, tell your men to stop calling me the maid. My name is Lena. I know. Then use it where they can hear. He nodded once. Good night, Lena. The name followed her down the marble hallway. It should not have warmed anything, but it did. By morning, the Rinaldi house had become careful around her. That was not the same as respectful, but it was a start. Men who had ignored her mop bucket now stepped aside before it touched their shoes. Enzo brought her coffee without being asked and set it beside her contract, not near her elbow as if expecting her to serve it. Matteo's lawyer, a narrow woman named Claudia who wore silver-rimmed glasses and no patience, reviewed the terms with Lena in plain language. He agreed to this? Claudia asked, tapping the clause that prohibited intimidation. He signed it. That is not what I asked. Lena almost smiled. I know. Claudia looked at her for a long second, then pushed the pen across the table. Read page 4 twice. It protects you if he forgets how civilized he is pretending to be. I am not pretending, Matteo said from the doorway. Claudia did not turn. Everyone pretends, Matteo. The question is how expensive it becomes when they stop. Lena decided she liked her. The search began at St. Orla's, a shuttered convent laundry on the north edge of the city, where brick walls sweated old steam and broken windows let ivy curl through the frames. Matteo wanted to send men in first. Lena told him they would trample the only useful evidence. It has been abandoned for years, Enzo said. So has common sense, Lena replied. It still leaves marks when crushed. Matteo stood beside the black SUV, one hand resting on the door. He wore a black overcoat despite the pale spring sun, and the signet ring on his hand caught the light each time he moved. The men around him waited for him to overrule her. He did not. "Lena leads," he said. 2 words, but in that world, they struck like a bell. Lena stepped through the convent gate with a flashlight, cotton gloves, vinegar bottle, and the same cheap rag she had washed twice since the lockbox. She should have felt ridiculous using cleaning tools in front of armed men who probably owned knives worth more than her rent. Instead, she felt steady. The first floor offered nothing obvious: old desks, cracked tile, empty shelves, and a chapel full of dust. Mateo's men searched doorways and corners, while Lena searched residue. In the laundry room, she found what she expected and one thing she did not. The expected thing was rose wax along the edge of an old folding table. The unexpected thing was fresh scuffing near the laundry chute. "Someone has been here," she said. Enzo crouched beside her. "Homeless?" "No. Expensive shoes, leather sole, careful walker." She looked at Mateo. "One of yours?" His face hardened. "That is a dangerous question." "So is the answer." He did not punish her for saying it. Another point in his favor. The laundry chute was sealed with a metal plate painted the same dull cream as the wall. Most people would have walked past it. Rich people saw old buildings as architecture. Lena saw all the places workers had once dragged weight through them. The plate had been painted over at least 6 times, but one screw head was cleaner than the rest. She pointed. "There." One of Mateo's men reached for a tool. "Stop," Lena said. He froze. If someone hid paper behind a laundry chute, they may have left a trap for people who open things like men. Mateo's gaze moved to her. "How do women open them?" "With suspicion and smaller tools." The corner of his mouth moved. She used a butter knife from her kit, not because it was elegant, but because it was thin enough to slide under old paint without tearing the surrounding flakes. Behind the plate was not a safe. It was a narrow cavity lined with oilcloth. Inside lay a second envelope, 3 photographs, and a key tagged with faded blue thread. Mateo did not reach for them. He waited while Lena lifted the photographs first. The child in them had dark curls, solemn eyes, and the same small silver bracelet from the lockbox. In the last photograph, she was older, perhaps 7, standing beside a woman in a gray habit outside a laundry door. Mateo looked at the photograph without breathing. Lena's chest tightened. Power did not protect people from grief. Sometimes it only gave grief better rooms to haunt. "She lived," Lena said. His hand hovered near the photograph, then stopped. "May I?" The question startled her. Not because he asked, but because he asked her. She handed it to him. His fingers trembled once before he controlled them. The men looked away, but Lena did not. He deserved privacy, but not erasure. Someone needed to witness the moment a man who had built an empire on certainty discovered his childhood grief had been a lie. "There is more," she said gently. The envelope had another wax seal, but this one had been broken recently. Mateo's softness vanished. "Who opened it?" Lena studied the torn paper. "Someone impatient, left-handed, and wearing cologne with cedar." Every man near them went still. Enzo swore under his breath. "Who?" Lena asked. Mateo looked at the torn seal. "My cousin, Lucian." The name entered the room like a draft under a locked door. Lucian Rinaldi was family, which meant betrayal would travel through Mateo's body before it reached his strategy. Lena saw it happen. His eyes became colder, but the hand holding the photograph tightened with pain before rage could hide it. "He knew?" she asked. "If he opened this, he knew my sister survived." "And wanted the ledger?" "Or wanted to make sure I never found her." The building groaned in the wind. Then glass broke upstairs, and Mateo moved in front of Lena. It was instinctive, fast, and exactly the sort of thing she had warned him about. "Don't," she snapped. He stopped, but only halfway. His body still shielded hers. "This is not the moment for a lesson." It is always the moment if you are blocking my view. Above them, footsteps crossed the old dormitory floor. Enzo signaled two men toward the stairs. Lena listened, not to the footsteps but to the pipes. Old buildings carried sound through plumbing the way gossip traveled through kitchens. The movement above them was too heavy near the east wall, too quick near the center, then suddenly hollow. Laundry drop, she said. Matteo turned. What? There is another chute. They are using it to move something down. At the far end of the laundry room, a canvas sorting bin shifted. Enzo saw it too late. A metal cylinder rolled from the cloth and struck the floor, hissing. Smoke began to coil, not fire yet, but chemical smoke meant to blind, scatter, and ruin paper. Matteo's men surged. No. Lena grabbed a bucket from the old wash station. Water will spread it if it is oil-based. Then what? Enzo barked. Linen. Wet linen. It was ridiculous, and it was perfect. She tore open one of the old laundry bins, found a stack of stiff linen sheets, and shoved them under the cracked faucet. Brown water spat first, then ran clear. Matteo reached for the sheets. Tell me where, he said. No argument. No command. No attempt to carry her away. He had listened. The realization hit her harder than the smoke. Door crack, she said, coughing once. Floor vent. Under the chute. Together they sealed the smoke paths with wet linen while Enzo's men drove the intruders down the stairs and into the waiting group of people who had no interest in drama. The chemical hiss died beneath the damp cloth. The envelope survived. One attacker tried to run through the back corridor with a satchel. Lena saw the blue thread tag swinging from it. The key, she said. Matteo moved like a shadow released from a wall. He caught the man at the corridor mouth, twisted the satchel free, and pinned him against the brick without drawing a weapon or raising his voice. Who sent you? Matteo asked. The man looked at Lena instead of him. That was his mistake, because Matteo noticed and so did Lena. Lucian is not here for the box, she said. He is here because of me. Matteo's eyes cut to her. You read what he missed, she said. He knows it now. The man in Matteo's grip closed his eyes, which was answer enough. Matteo's face became a door with all the locks turning from inside. Enzo, he said. Alive, Lena said. Matteo looked at her. She coughed again, eyes watering from the smoke, but she held his gaze. Alive tells you more. The old Matteo Rinaldi might have made a lesson of the man in the corridor. Lena knew that. Everyone in the room knew it. This Matteo looked at her, measured the cost of obedience, and paid it. Alive, he said, and Enzo nodded. That was when Lena understood the true danger of being seen by a man like Matteo. It was not that he would own her. It was that he might change because of her, and make her responsible for hoping the change was real. They returned to the Rinaldi house after dusk. Rain had begun, light and silver, turning the garden paths black. Lena should have gone home. Instead, she sat in the same study where the lockbox had opened the night before, wrapped in a dry wool blanket that probably cost more than everything in her closet. The green patina lockbox sat on the desk between them. The second envelope had revealed three things: a convent name, an old transport receipt, and a new address in a coastal town 2 hours away. Matteo's sister might be alive. She might be using another name. She might hate him for never finding her, or know nothing of him at all. Hope was not gentle, it had teeth. Matteo stood by the window with his back to Lena. I thought my mother chose my father over us. Lena held the blanket tighter. Maybe she chose the only path that kept one child breathing. And left me with him. There it was, not anger but the wound under it. This was the quiet turn, not because the room became soft, but because the danger finally stopped performing long enough to tell the truth. Lena looked at the lockbox. The lotus button still showed a faint stain where vinegar had cleaned the seam. Inside the lid, half hidden beneath the velvet lining, she had noticed another wax line. "Bring the lamp lower," she said. Matteo turned. "What?" "The lamp. Lower, and to my left." He moved immediately, then stopped when his body blocked the light. She lifted an eyebrow. For the first time that night, something like breath moved through him. "I am blocking the light," he said. "You are learning." He stepped aside. She warmed the inner velvet with the lamp and used a clean rag to lift old wax from the seam. A thin strip of brass appeared beneath it, engraved with words so small she had to bend close. "For the child he thinks he lost." Matteo read it over her shoulder. He did not touch her, but she felt the effort it cost him not to. The room held them in the narrow space between grief and permission. "My mother knew I would open it," he said. "Maybe she hoped you would. I hated her for 17 years. Hate is often grief with armor." His laugh was almost nothing. "You say that as if you clean it off baseboards." "Sometimes I do." He looked at her then, and she saw the exhaustion beneath the power, the boy under the empire, the man who had spent half his life treating every closed thing like an enemy because the first locked door had stolen his mother from him. "You don't need a stronger lock," Lena said. "You need to stop treating every closed thing like an enemy." The words changed him. Not loudly. Matteo Rinaldi did nothing loudly unless he wanted the world to misunderstand the real violence. But his shoulders lowered, and his eyes moved from the box to her face with the stunned attention of a man recognizing the shape of a key after years of gripping the wrong blade. "Lena." Her name was rough in his mouth. "Yes? May I stand here?" He was already near, and he was asking if he could remain. That difference mattered. She looked at the space between them, at his hands, at the lockbox, at the door she could still leave through. "Only if you stop blocking the light." He stepped half an inch aside. She smiled before she could stop herself. Matteo saw it. For one heartbeat, all the power in the room went quiet. He did not reach for her. He did not turn the moment into conquest. He only stood beside her and held the lamp while she uncovered the rest of his mother's message, line by line, until the lost shape of his family began to appear from beneath wax and dust. After midnight, Enzo brought fresh information. Lucian had not fled the city. He had gone to the Rinaldi archival warehouse, the one Matteo's mother had used before her death. If he found the transport records first, he could erase the sister's trail for good. Matteo closed the lockbox with careful hands. "We go now." "I go," Lena said. "No. There is that word again." His eyes flashed. "Lucian sent men into a convent because of what you saw. Which means he will hide what matters where your men will not look. My men can search a warehouse. Your men search for safes, files, weapons, and exits. I search for dust that moved." Enzo, to his credit, did not argue. Matteo looked at the door, then at the lockbox, then at Lena. His instinct wanted her behind walls. His new discipline kept that instinct on a leash. "You stay beside me," he said. "I stay where the evidence is." Lena. Matteo. Enzo studied the ceiling as if old plaster had become deeply interesting. At last Matteo said, "Fine." That sounded painful. It was. The archival warehouse stood near the river, a brick building without signs, tucked between a fish wholesaler and a shuttered furniture factory. Rain slid down the windows in long silver threads. Inside, rows of metal shelves held banker boxes, wrapped paintings, old ledgers, broken chandeliers, and the kind of family history men kept because they could not decide whether memory was inheritance or ammunition. Lucian had been there. Lena knew before Matteo's men found the first open drawer, because a path through dust told the truth. The intruder had avoided the obvious rows and gone toward the rear service corridor, where old housekeeping supplies were stored near a freight elevator. That alone told her he had begun thinking like her. Not well enough. "He is looking for something your mother hid in the worker spaces," Lena said. Matteo's mouth tightened. Because you taught him that mattered. No. Because your mother did. The correction stopped him from blaming himself too quickly. They reached the old laundry sorting room at the back of the warehouse. It had not been used for years, but covered hampers still lined one wall. Mateo's men opened two. Empty. Lena opened none. She looked at the wheels. That one moved recently, she said. The hamper in the corner looked identical to the others except for the narrow clean arc beneath one caster. She pushed it aside and found a trap panel under the dust. Let me, one of the men said. No. He looked to Mateo. Mateo did not rescue him. She said no. Lena knelt, ran her fingers around the panel edge, and smelled bitter almond. Her blood chilled. Do not lift it. Everyone froze. Acid packet? Worse. Old photographic fixer and bleach. It will ruin paper and skin. Can you disarm it? I can make it board. Enzo blinked. Bored? Chemicals are like men. Most are dangerous only when agitated. Mateo looked at her. Not now, she said. I said nothing. You were thinking loudly. Again, that almost smile. She used cotton rags, baking soda from an emergency spill kit, and a flat scraper to neutralize the trap slowly. It took 7 minutes, not 1. Her knees hurt by the end. Sweat ran down her back despite the cold warehouse. When the panel lifted, inside was a metal tube wrapped in oilcloth. Mateo crouched beside her. This time, he did not block the light. Inside the tube were transport papers, a birth certificate under a different name, and a photograph of a teenage girl standing beside the ocean with the silver bracelet on her wrist. Mateo's sister had lived. Her new name was Clarabelle. The address was current, and no one spoke for a long moment until a shot cracked somewhere near the front of the warehouse. Lena flinched. Mateo's hand closed around her wrist, not hard, not dragging, only enough to pull her behind the shelf as glass broke above them. His bodyguards moved with brutal speed. Shouts ricocheted through the aisles. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She hated that part of his world. She hated how fast men arrived at damage when they had run out of words. But she also saw the packet of papers in his hand, the photograph, the future a dead mother had hidden in laundry and wax. Another crash sounded near the service exit. Smoke began curling under the rear door. They are burning the old invoices, Enzo shouted. Mateo's face hardened. Lena looked up at the ceiling. Sprinkler heads, old and corroded, were probably disconnected from the main panel after years of storage violations. Where is the pump room? She asked. Enzo pointed. South wall. Mateo shook his head. No. If the records burn, you lose the trail. If you run toward fire, then stand where I ask you to stand. He stared at her. The warehouse filled with smoke and decisions. Then he moved. Together they reached the pump room. The valve wheel was rusted nearly shut. Mateo grabbed it first, but Lena stopped him with one hand on his wrist. You will shear it off. Then what? Rag, vinegar, heat. Again? Old things have limited personalities. He gave her his handkerchief. She soaked it, wrapped the valve, warmed the joint with a utility torch from the spill kit, and nodded. Mateo turned slowly, using strength with restraint instead of force. The valve groaned, water hammered through the pipes, and a second later sprinklers burst across the archive room. Men cursed, fire hissed, and paper survived. Mateo looked at Lena through the steam. There were soot marks along his jaw. Rainwater and sprinkler water had darkened his black hair. He looked furious, dangerous, and alive in a way that made every warning in her practical mind stand up straight. You saved my sister twice, he said. I saved paper. The paper leads to her. Then go find her. Come with me. The words came too quickly. Lena stepped back. Mateo caught himself. She watched him do it. watched the command reach his mouth and become something else because she had taught him that the first shape of wanting was not always the one worth speaking. "Will you come with me?" he asked. That was better, though still impossible. "No," she said. Pain crossed his face before pride covered it. "Why?" "Because this is your sister. Your mother. Your house of grief. I helped you open the doors. You have to walk through this one without making me the handle." Enzo looked away. Matteo looked at her for a long time. "And when I return? Then you can tell me what she said. Will you be there?" Lena thought of her apartment, her rent, her father, her uniform with safety pins, and the way Matteo had moved aside when she told him he was blocking the light. "If you ask properly," she said. Matteo nodded. "Lena Vale," he said, every syllable deliberate, "may I see you when I return?" "Yes." It should not have felt like a door opening, but it did. Matteo found Clara Belle 3 days later. Lena did not witness the first meeting. She only heard about it afterward in the quietest version, from Matteo himself, in the kitchen of the Rinaldi house after midnight. He stood by the counter without a jacket, sleeves rolled to his forearms, while Lena sat at the small breakfast table with coffee she had poured herself because she refused to be waited on by staff who still looked nervous around her. "She knew my mother's name," he said. Lena wrapped both hands around the mug. "And yours?" "No." That hurt him, though he did not say so and did not need to. "She has children," he added. Lena smiled softly. "You are an uncle." He looked almost offended by the tenderness of the word. "Apparently." "Do they know what you are?" "Clara does." "And?" She asked if I intended to bring trouble to her doorstep. Smart woman. She reminded me of someone. Lena looked down into her coffee. Matteo crossed the kitchen slowly and set something on the table. The green patina lockbox. Lena's breath caught. It had been cleaned, but not polished. The green remained in the grooves, the lotus button visible now that the sugar and wax had been removed. It looked older, truer. "Why is this here?" "Because I wanted to give it to you." Her face closed. He saw that and lifted a hand, palm open. "Not as payment." "Then what?" "A reminder." "Of your family?" "Of the first time someone in this house looked at what every expert missed." Lena touched the edge of the box with one finger. "This belongs to your sister." I asked her. She said she has no use for locked things from dead people. I like her already. She also said if you opened it, perhaps you should keep it. That made Lena quiet, and Matteo sat across from her, not at the head of the table but across. "Small thing, not small." "I have another offer," he said. "Matteo." "A clean one." "That remains to be seen. The Rinaldi properties need an internal physical auditor. Not an accountant. Not security. Someone who understands how theft, neglect, and danger leave marks in the real world. I want you to build the department." Lena stared at him. "A department? With your own staff, salary, and authority to shut down any property that fails inspection. Including this house?" "Especially this house." "And if I say no?" "Then I will need to hire someone less terrifying." She did not smile, not yet. "Why me?" Matteo's answer was immediate. "Because you see where the world is fraying." The kitchen clock ticked. Lena thought of her father, bent over a music box with a lamp in his hand. She thought of every person who had treated her uniform like proof that her mind could not matter. She thought of the moment the lockbox sighed open and a room full of powerful men forgot how to speak. "I have conditions," she said. "I brought paper." "Of course you did." He slid a folder toward her. "I do not wear a maid uniform," she said. "No. I do not answer to Enzo. He will survive the heartbreak. I do not become your secret weapon." Matteo leaned back. "What do you become?" Lena looked at the green patina lockbox. The person who tells you when the beautiful thing is hiding rot. His gaze held hers. That is a dangerous job. So was mopping your study. This time he smiled. Not much, but enough. She opened the folder and read the first page. It was clean. Claudia had drafted it, Lena could tell by the lack of romantic nonsense and the sharp penalty clause against interference. You had your lawyer protect me from you. She insisted. Good lawyer. Expensive lawyer. Worth it. I am beginning to understand that distinction. Lena signed nothing that night. She took the folder home, read it twice, and made notes in the margins with a red pen because her father had taught her that a person's name belonged only on paper they understood. The next evening, she returned. Matteo was in the study, standing near the desk where the lockbox had first opened. No experts, no bounty cash, no drill, only the green patina box, her red-marked contract, and 2 cups of coffee. I made changes, she said. I assumed. You have to give my department authority to inspect domestic staff housing. Done. You have to stop using third-party cleaning agencies that dock pay for impossible workloads. Done. You have to apologize to the staff you treated like furniture. Matteo went still. There it was, the limit. Money was easy. Authority was manageable. Apology required a man like him to stand in front of people who feared him and admit they had seen him wrongly because he had let them. All of them? He asked. The ones who cleaned this house. In writing? In person. Enzo, standing by the bookshelf, suddenly found the carpet fascinating. Matteo looked at Lena for a long time. Then he nodded. Done. Lena signed. The next morning, the household staff gathered in the back dining room, confused, anxious, and ready to be blamed for something. Matteo stood before them in a black suit while Lena stood near the door, arms crossed, the green patina lockbox on the sideboard beside her. No one sat, and Matteo noticed because now she had taught him to notice. Sit, he said, then stopped. His jaw tightened. Please sit. They sat slowly. He looked at the cooks, maids, drivers, laundry women, gardeners, and night cleaners who kept his world polished enough to look effortless. This house has treated invisible work as if it were performed by invisible people, he said. That ends today. Ms. Vale opened a box 25 experts failed to open because she understood the residue this house ignored. She also made clear that respect is not a bonus paid when convenient. Lena looked at him. He did not look away. I apologize, he said. The room went silent, not politely silent but shocked silent. One older kitchen woman pressed a hand to her mouth. Matteo continued. You will receive new contracts, fair hours, and direct access to Ms. Vale's office if any manager punishes you for refusing unsafe or degrading work. If any man in this house treats your labor as a reason to dismiss your mind, he answers to me after he answers to her. Enzo looked mildly pained at the size of the cultural earthquake. Lena felt something inside her loosen. It was not victory exactly, because victory sounded too clean, it was a hinge moving after years of paint and rust. The first test of Lena's new authority came before lunch. It did not arrive with a gunshot, a rival family, or a dramatic envelope slid under a door. It arrived as a kitchen maid named Maribel standing outside Lena's new storage room office with both hands twisted in her apron, trying to decide whether the new rules were real enough to risk believing. Ms. Vale, Maribel said, barely above a whisper, the supply manager says I lost the payroll vouchers. Lena looked up from the contract folder. Did you? No. The answer came too quickly to be rehearsed and too frightened to be casual. Lena set down her pen. Come in. Maribel stepped into the room but did not sit until Lena pointed to the chair, and even then she perched on the edge as if the furniture might report her for trespassing. She was 19, maybe 20, with tired eyes and a burn mark on her wrist from kitchen steam. The payroll vouchers were old-fashioned paper slips the Rinaldi house still used for overtime, petty cash, and reimbursements, because rich households loved tradition when tradition made accountability harder to trace. According to Maribel, the vouchers had been locked in a small tin box inside the supply pantry. According to the manager, only Maribel had touched that pantry after midnight. According to the manager, a girl with a sick mother and 2 younger brothers had exactly the kind of need that made theft believable. Lena listened without interrupting, then asked one question. What did the box smell like? Maribel blinked. Smell like? When he opened it in front of you. Orange oil, Maribel said slowly. And metal. He wipes everything with that orange polish he likes. Lena stood, because the old version of her would have found a supervisor, explained cautiously, and watched the accusation become an administrative fog. The new version picked up her notebook, a cotton rag, and the small bottle of white vinegar she had placed in her drawer that morning, because some doors in powerful houses still opened only when a woman brought her own tools. The supply manager, Mr. Pell, did not enjoy seeing her enter the pantry. He was a narrow man with slick hair, shiny shoes, and the wounded dignity of a petty tyrant who had just learned a larger tyrant had changed the locks. He smiled at her with all his teeth and none of his face. Ms. Vale, he said. I was told you handle unusual audits, not housekeeping disputes. Any dispute that can cost a worker her wages is unusual enough. His smile tightened. The matter is simple. The vouchers were in this tin. They are gone. Maribel had access. Lena looked at the tin box on the shelf. It was cheap gray metal, dented at one corner, and polished along the lid more carefully than anything else in the pantry. Men like Pell always cleaned the evidence they understood and forgot the residue they were too vain to notice. Mateo entered behind her, and although he did not announce himself, the pantry changed temperature anyway. Pell straightened so quickly his spine might have hurt. Mr. Rinaldi, he said. I assure you, this is being handled. Lena did not look back at Mateo. Then he can watch. No one in the pantry moved. Mateo's voice came from behind her, calm and faintly amused. I can. That was enough to make Pell pale. Lena took the tin box in both hands. The latch had been opened recently, but the right edge of the lid had a half-moon smear of orange oil laid over dust rather than under it. That meant someone had polished after opening the box, trying to erase prints. She lifted the lid and examined the inside seam. No vouchers, but a strip of torn paper clung beneath the hinge, caught where a careless hand had shoved the stack out too quickly. Pell saw her notice it. That could be anything, he said. It could. She dipped the cotton rag in a single drop of white vinegar and rubbed gently at the orange polish around the hinge. The top layer dissolved, leaving behind a faint dark powder in the crease. Not kitchen dust. Not pantry dirt. Carbon paper. Your office still uses carbon duplicate sheets for wage vouchers, Lena said. Pell swallowed. If Maribel took the originals, she continued, the carbon dust would be inside her apron pocket or under her nails. It is not. It is on your polished tin, where the slips were pulled sideways and separated from the duplicate stack. Mateo stepped closer, but not close enough to block the light, and Lena appreciated that more than she should have. Where are they? He asked Pell. The manager's mouth opened and closed. Lena turned the tin over. Not far. Men like him hide small thefts where they can retrieve them before anyone important has patience to look. She scanned the pantry, flour bins, vinegar crates, a locked liquor cabinet, shelves of imported oil, bags of coffee, and a brass vent cover beneath the lowest shelf. The vent cover had 4 screws, 3 dusty and 1 bright. She crouched, and Pell made a sound. That vent is filthy. Most useful places are. Behind her, Mateo made no sound at all, but she could feel his attention like a lamp warming her back. She removed the bright screw with a kitchen butter knife, because it was what she had, and slid the vent cover aside. A folded packet of paper lay behind it, wrapped in wax paper from the pastry kitchen. The missing vouchers were inside, along with 3 weeks of shaved overtime slips from 6 different workers. Maribel covered her mouth. Pell stepped backward and hit the shelf as Mateo's voice became very soft. Explain. Pell tried, using mistake, confusion, pressure, accounting, and temporary adjustment. He said every word weak men used when theft dressed itself as procedure. Mateo listened until the third lie, then looked at Lena. What should happen? Pell stared at him. So did Maribel. Lena felt the whole pantry waiting to learn whether her authority was ornamental or real. Every worker is paid what was taken by the end of the day, she said. Pell is removed from staff access and referred to Claudia for civil recovery. No intimidation. No midnight lesson. No disappearing him into a room where everyone has to pretend not to know what happened. Pell's relief was so visible it almost made him ugly, and Mateo noticed that too. You think that is mercy? He asked Pell. The manager froze. It is not, Mateo said. It is Ms. Vale teaching me that a punishment people can see sometimes repairs more than a fear they can only imagine. Maribel began to cry silently, and Lena turned to her, not Pell. You go to payroll with Claudia. You do not apologize for being accused. Yes, Ms. Vale. The title still sounded strange. It also sounded earned. When the pantry emptied, Mateo remained beside the low shelf while Lena replaced the vent cover. He held the screws in his palm without being asked, and when she reached for them, he gave them one by one, like a man helping with a small ritual he did not understand but had chosen to respect. You could have let me handle him, he said. I did. His mouth curved. Did you? You stood there, listened, and did not turn a wage thief into theater. That was handling him. It felt inefficient. That is because you are used to fear doing paperwork. He looked at the tin box, then at the white vinegar bottle in her hand. You found a theft in 6 minutes with pantry dirt. 4 minutes. You asked 2 questions. I apologize for slowing the investigation. See that you do better. He laughed then, quietly, in the pantry where a girl had almost lost her wages and a powerful man had almost reverted to the shape of power he understood best. The sound was low and brief, and it stayed with Lena all afternoon because it was the first time she heard him laugh without pain hiding underneath it. After the meeting, Mateo found her in the study. Was that sufficient? It was a beginning. You are difficult to impress. You hired me for standards. I hired you because you terrify me. Lena laughed before she could stop herself. His eyes softened. There, he said. There what? That sound. My laugh? I wanted to hear it without smoke, deadlines, or family ghosts in the room. Lena looked at him. The study was quiet now. The lockbox sat open on the desk. Sunlight touched the lotus button, and the green patina glowed instead of hiding. That sounds dangerously close to romance, she said. I hoped so. Her heart misbehaved. Matteo Rinaldi, are you flirting in a room where you once offered me cartel cash? I am improving the setting. Barely. Then allow me to try elsewhere. She knew what he was asking, and it was not for obedience, gratitude, or the body of the woman who had solved his impossible problem. It was for a chance. Dinner? She asked. Dinner. Somewhere your men do not stare at the door. 2 men outside. 1. 2, but across the street. 1, across the street, and he eats something. Matteo considered. Enzo will object. Enzo looks hungry. Everyone looks hungry to you. That is because most people are. His expression changed again, that careful shift from amusement into attention, as if she had opened another small locked room without touching a tool. Tomorrow, he said. 7? I finish at 6. You are the department head now. And department heads finish what they start. 7:30, then. 7:30. He reached toward the lockbox and closed the lid gently. May I ask something else? You are learning to ask a great deal. May I walk you to the door? It was absurdly formal, and it was also not absurd at all. Lena picked up the contract folder and the green patina lockbox, which was heavier than she expected. Matteo noticed and reached out, then stopped before assuming. "May I carry that?" She studied him. "To the car." "Not forever." "To the car," he agreed. She handed him the lockbox. His hands closed around it with reverence. Not for the brass, not for the family history, but for the trust of being allowed to carry something she had chosen not to surrender. As they walked through the hall, the staff did not flatten themselves against the walls the way they had before. They stepped aside, yes, because Matteo was still Matteo Rinaldi, but they also nodded to Lena. One of the younger maids smiled shyly. The older kitchen woman whispered, "Good evening, Ms. Vale." Lena almost stumbled, and Matteo heard the hitch in her breath but did not comment. That was another kind of progress. At the front door, rain had stopped and the garden smelled of wet stone. A black car waited near the steps, but not too close. Enzo stood across the drive, pretending not to be curious. Matteo handed Lena the lockbox. Their fingers touched. The contact was small. It moved through her anyway. "Lena," he said. "Yes?" "When you opened this, I thought you had solved a problem." "I did." "You did more than that." "Careful." "I am trying." She looked up at him. Dangerous man. Careful hands. A mind trained for power, now learning the shape of restraint because a maid with vinegar had refused to be bought. "Then say it plainly," she said. Matteo's eyes held hers. "You made me look at the places I had paid not to see." That was plain enough. It was also more intimate than any compliment he could have given her. Lena held the lockbox against her ribs. "Good night, Matteo." "Good night, Lena." She walked down the steps with the green patina lockbox in her arms, a clean contract in her bag, and the strange, steady knowledge that she had entered the house as a ghost and left it as the woman the most dangerous man in the city had learned to hear. 3 months later, a small brass plaque appeared on the 3rd floor of the Rinaldi house, beside a door that had once led to a storage room full of broken chairs and forgotten curtains. Lena Vale Physical Operations Audit. No one had asked her whether she wanted gold letters. Matteo had asked whether brass would be acceptable because it matched the lockbox without looking like a monument. She had said yes. Her office smelled of coffee, cotton paper, furniture polish, and the vinegar she still kept in the lower drawer because some truths required acid before they loosened. On the shelf behind her desk sat the green patina lockbox. Not polished. Not restored beyond recognition. The lotus button still bore a faint shadow where sugar and wax had once sealed it shut. People came to her now with problems they used to hide. A cook brought a payroll discrepancy. A driver brought a fuel log that smelled wrong. A laundry woman brought a torn cuff with powder on the seam. Lena listened to all of them. She looked at stains, dust, wear, weight, and the physical evidence left by people who thought labor made witnesses invisible. Matteo came at the end of long days. Never without knocking. That mattered. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes he brought files. Sometimes he brought nothing but the quiet of a man who had spent the day being feared and wanted 10 minutes in a room where fear did not improve the conversation. One evening, he arrived with a small paper bag. "Dinner?" Lena asked. "Cannoli." "That is not dinner." Rosa disagrees. Rosa would call espresso a vegetable if it helped her argument. He set the bag on her desk and looked at the lockbox on the shelf. Clara called. Lena softened. "How is she?" "Suspicious." "Good. She wants to meet you." Lena looked up. Matteo's voice remained even, but the question beneath it was not. This was his sister, the child he had mourned, the person his mother had hidden with wax and laundry dust. Asking Lena to meet her was not casual. It was not business. It was an opening inside the guarded architecture of his life. "Does she know what I do?" Lena asked. "She knows you opened the box." That sounds dramatic. It was. I used vinegar. You changed my life with vinegar. Lena tried not to smile. Failed. Matteo saw it and leaned one shoulder against the doorframe, the great Mafia boss temporarily defeated by a cheap cleaning acid and a woman who refused to be impressed by him in predictable ways. Will you come? He asked. There it was again, ask, not command. She closed the file on her desk. Yes. The relief in his face was almost invisible, which meant she had learned him well enough to see it. Tomorrow afternoon, he said. I have inspections until 3. After 3. And dinner? With Clara, Rosa, and the children. Children? 3 of them. Lena leaned back. The most feared Mafia boss in the city is about to be outnumbered by children. I am aware. Are you frightened? Deeply. She laughed. He watched her laugh as if it still surprised him that rooms could hold that sound without charging him for it. The next day, Clara Belle arrived with 3 children, a cautious smile, and the same silver bracelet on her wrist. Rosa cried without apology. Matteo stood beside the window with his hands clasped behind his back, controlled until Clara crossed the room and placed one hand on his cheek. Lena looked away then. Some doors were not hers to watch open. Later, when the family noise had softened into dinner, Clara found Lena near the hallway table where the green patina lockbox had been placed for Rosa to see. You opened it, Clara said. It was stuck. Matteo said 25 experts failed. Experts often fail when they refuse to get low enough to see the dirt. Clara smiled. I think I understand why he listens to you. Lena did not know what to do with that sentence. Before she could answer, Matteo appeared at the hallway entrance with a child on each side of him demanding he choose between 2 drawings. He looked overwhelmed, dignified, and slightly terrified. Lena held up one finger. Check the hands. Children always tell you who they trust by whose hands they draw largest. Matteo looked down at the drawings. Both children had drawn his hands enormous. He went silent. Clara's eyes filled. Lena pretended to inspect the lockbox. A few minutes later, Matteo came to stand beside her. You saw that immediately. Children draw truth before they learn to hide it. And adults? Adults hide truth in locked boxes, laundry chutes, dirty linens, and payroll ledgers. Then I am fortunate to know someone who cleans. She looked at him sharply. He smiled, just enough to show he had meant it with reverence. That was new. By the end of dinner, Rosa had decided Lena was too thin, Clara had decided Matteo needed practice with children, and the children had decided Enzo was a mountain who could be climbed if distracted. Matteo looked across the room at Lena while chaos softened the house around him. He did not look saved. That would have been too simple. He looked changed, and change was harder. When Lena prepared to leave, Matteo walked her to the door with the same careful formality he had learned in pieces. Rain tapped the garden stones. You are smiling, she said. Am I? A little. It may be a medical emergency. Ask Rosa. She will prescribe cannoli. He stepped onto the covered porch with her. No bodyguards crowded them. Enzo waited by the car gate, close enough to be useful and far enough not to ruin the silence. Dinner tomorrow? Matteo asked. Again? I am testing repetition. For what purpose? To see if joy becomes less frightening with practice. Lena's chest tightened. There were men who said beautiful things because they had learned women rewarded them. Matteo said them like a man reporting dangerous weather, reluctantly, accurately, with no idea whether he would survive the storm he had named. It does, she said. If you stop treating it like a lock. And if it sticks? Vinegar. He laughed. Not much. Enough to make Rosa look from the dining room window and smile like a woman who had just watched a long winter lose an argument. Matteo reached into his coat and took out a small cotton rag, clean, folded, and familiar. Lena stared. Is that mine? You left it in the study. You kept my cleaning rag? It opened the first honest door in this house. That is the most dramatic thing anyone has ever said about cotton. May I keep it? The question should have been absurd. It was not. Lena thought of the green patina lockbox on her office shelf, of the staff who now knocked on her door, of Clara's children drawing Mateo's hands large enough to trust, of the night she had stood in the study smelling bleach and exhaustion while 25 men failed at a problem she understood because she had spent her life cleaning what they spilled. Yes, she said. But wash it. Of course. And do not frame it. He paused. Mateo. Fine. She laughed again, and this time, when he looked at her, she did not look away. The most dangerous man in the city had once offered her $50,000 to solve a problem. She had taken $400, a receipt, and the right to walk out with her name intact. Now she stood on his porch with rain in the garden, a clean contract in her office, his sister laughing inside, and a future that had not purchased her but had made room for her. Sometimes a locked thing did not need force. Sometimes it needed heat, vinegar, patience, and a woman everyone else had mistaken for background. And sometimes the man who owned the house did not become worthy because he opened the door. He became worthy because he stepped aside, held the light, and let her show him where the real latch had always been. If Lena's story stayed with you, tell us in the comments.